Hey everybody, it's Lily from Siser North America. Today we're going to be talking about test cuts. What are they, why do you want to do them, and how to go about it. On this episode of Clued Into Crafting, check it out. Has this ever happened to you? You've cut your heat transfer vinyl and then you go to weed it and all of the letters stay on the mat? Or maybe you've cut your adhesive vinyl and then when you go to weed it, all of the paper peels up with it as well. Well, we have a trick for you to solve that issue, and it's called a test cut. So a test cut is a small shape or a shape within a shape that you cut before you cut a full design so you can gauge how well your settings are going to do. This is beneficial for both HTV and PSV and pretty much any material you're going to be working with. So here on our cutting mat, I already have Easy Weed Electric, Easy Reflective, Easy Weed Adhesive, and Easy Weed Stretch. We're gonna do a test cut on each of these and see how it goes. If you have a Silhouette Cameo, you probably are aware that they have a test cut function right within that software, which is awesome. It'll cut a little box and a little triangle with inside that box, and that'll be your test cut to see how well your settings are doing. You can also create your own test cut, and that's what I decided to do for this project today. And basically it's just a square with a star inside. So you can do any little shape, but I recommend something with either a triangle or a star so it's pointed, because we're going to be evaluating how well the blade cut around those points. So we got that weeded up pretty good. It did stick in one corner of the square here, so we might want to consider adjusting our setting a little bit. This was the Easy Weed Stretch. So here's why it did this, you guys. Pro tip, turn the speed down when you're cutting Easy Weed Stretch. High speed on stretch can sometimes lead to bouncing blade, and then you'll have dashed cutting lines. So here probably the issue with this corner was that it was going too fast around the corner and it didn't really complete the cut. So maybe turn down your speed a little bit, try another test cut. If that one goes well, then you found your setting. Let's try Easy Weed Electric. See, that one didn't get stuck in the corner at all. We did really, really nicely. For the most part, your Easy Weed and your Easy Weed Electric settings will be similar, but you might want to test cut it, especially for something special like silver lens. It could have a different cut setting because it's made a little bit different. We're moving on to the Easy Weed adhesive in the corner here, and it is a little tricky to see your test cut. So if you have a dark surface to weed on top of, that's recommended. Or you can kind of tilt it until you see the corner. Awesome. So the other thing you'll notice, if it doesn't weed up at all, then that's definitely a bad test cut. Your blade didn't go deep enough to even cut through your vinyl. But these are all looking pretty great. Last is Easy Reflective, beautiful. And the other reason I use stars, you guys, is we're gonna save all these stars for a little special project at the end, so don't go away. Okay, so now that we've tried it out on the Cameo, we're gonna do a test cut on our Brother Scan & Cut SDX 125. So on our mat here, we've got a variety of materials. We have holographic, we have glitter, easy pattern, sparkle, Easy Weed Extra, and metal HTV. So these are all very different, and you want to make sure you test cut your settings with these. Okay, so we got all our test cuts in, and now we're gonna weed these out and see how they look. I'm getting a little stuck there on that star, so I'm kind of thinking it might be not quite enough pressure. We did go back and add a little bit more pressure on our second cut setting. There we go, beautiful. A couple other things that can affect your test cuts are the age and wear of your blade as well as your mat. If your blade is older, it might not test cut as well. And if your mat is dirty, you might end up with areas that aren't cut quite as well as other areas. So if your test cuts aren't turning out well, it might be time to take a good hard look at your blade and your cutting mat. So the Scan & Cut does have a built-in test cut feature that you guys can take advantage of, or like we did before with the Cameo, you can create your own test cut, just a little shape inside of a box. Remember, we're gonna save our stars for that project at the end. And there we go, we had a little bit of that one pick up with the rest of the square here. So we might need to consider a little bit more force when we go on. You want to go up in your force before you start changing your blade. So get to the highest point of force where you can adjust it, and then if it's still not cutting right, then you can start considering bringing your blade out further. And holographic is a tricky one, you guys. Definitely test cut your holographic, because this one is looking like it did not go that well. So a bad test cut, you guys, either can't be weeded, or it's cut so deep that when you weed it, the star remains on your cutting mat. So this one, I'm literally having to break the cut line with my weeder here. I finally got across the edge of that square. And as we peel it up, the star should stay down, but because it was a bad test cut, you end up with something like that. So definitely need a higher force, possibly even the blade more exposed, a higher blade number as well. So the glitter is a thicker product as well, and probably needs a higher cutting force and possibly a higher blade setting. I found the edge of the square here, but other than that, it really doesn't want to peel up. So I know the star is not gonna come with it. So there you can kind of see it cut a little bit through the glitter, but not enough to make the whole star. So we're getting there, but it definitely needs a higher force. If you have to, you can punch it out still. You can still save it if you wanted to, but before you cut your full design, you definitely want to hone your cut setting a little bit more so that you're not stuck punching out your design, the whole thing. But that's why a test cut is good. It lets you know in a little way what you can expect. So last but not least, we're gonna do test cuts on the Cricut Maker. So Cricut doesn't have a built-in test cut function in their software, but you can make a test cut like we've done with the past cutters, and then you can gauge your settings that way. So on our cutting mat, we have a Strip Flock Pro, Brick 600, and Blackboard heat transfer vinyl. Okay, so we've got our test cuts here, and let's try to weed them out and see what happens. Okay, so we've definitely cut too deep for sure. So if you have ever had your design stay on the mat while you're weeding, you've cut too deep, you've cut through the actual carrier as well on the back of the material, and you need to step back in pressure and maybe even in blade. And again, the star didn't even come out with that one. We punched out the whole square there, definitely too deep, as well as on our Brick 600. So this is what it will look like, you guys, if you've cut too deep and you go to weed up the rest of the area and your design stays down, it's definitely going to be too deep. So if this happens to you based off of a suggested Siser setting, don't worry. Sometimes you need to adjust based off of that setting. So it is a starting point for you. It's what we recommend. For most people it will work, but sometimes it doesn't work with your blade. Sometimes your blade's a little older, a little newer, and it needs a different setting. That's why we recommend doing a test cut with every product, because it's going to let you know if that's going to be a good setting for you or not. So now we're gonna cut our final piece to this design, and we've got all of our stars saved from our test cuts, and we just need one more little chunk to finish this up. So I'm gonna cut our blackboard here. So if you've test cut your material and adjusted your settings to make sure it's a good test cut, you should have success when you cut your full design. But the truth is in the weeding. Looking pretty good. One little cavity here, and success. So now that we have our silhouette on top of the little hill, we are going to use our stars that are left over from our test cuts to create a little star scene in the sky. Okay, so we've got all of our little stars on our shirt and we're ready to heat apply. Just gonna place our cover sheet on top and press with our iron. Here we go. Okay, you guys, so I hope you learned something today. We went over what is a test cut, why you want to do it, and how you're going to do it on several popular craft cutters. And if you make your test cut a star, you can make an awesome little t-shirt at the end of your project.